After studying this module, you will understand the concept of the money market, be familiar with the demand for money or motives to hold money, understand the concept of supply of money, know the concept of high-powered money and money multiplier, learn about equilibrium in the money market, derive the LM curve, know about shifts in the LM curve, know about slope of the LM curve. The previous module was on the equilibrium in goods market and we learnt about the IS curve. According to Keynesian analysis, the demand and supply of money has an important role to play in determining the rate of interest. The present module attempts to introduce the concept of equilibrium in the money market and the LM curve. Thereafter, in the following module, we will bring the IS and LM curves together to determine simultaneous equilibrium in goods and asset markets. First, we will discuss the asset and money markets in this module and understand how the rate of interest is determined. The asset market. In the previous module, we saw how households' decision to allocate aggregate income between consumption and savings had an impact of the level of aggregate demand and hence output. This analysis ignored the financial sector altogether. Now we explicitly bring in the financial sector by looking at how agents allocate their financial wealth between available assets and money. Keynes, in his analysis, assumed that there are only two types of financial instruments, namely money and bonds, non-monetary financial assets. Holding money is convenient as it can be readily used for settling transactions. However, money provides no additional financial return and it is demanded for its own sake as it is liquid, whereas bonds are non-monetary financial assets and the rate of return or yield of the bond is the interest rate. So, if an individual holds his entire income in the form of money, he will not get any return. In fact, the return would be negative if the price levels are rising as the value of money will go down over time. An individual who holds his income in the form of bonds will get a rate of return, but the price of bonds is itself subject to fluctuations. A fall in the price of bonds will mean a capital loss to the bondholder, while a rise in bond prices create capital gains for all those who bought bonds when price was low. You will see that the price of bonds is linked to the interest rate on the bond. In particular, a rise in interest rates will mean that price of bonds goes down and vice versa. In other words, bond prices and interest rates are inversely related. When a person buys a bond, he essentially gets a claim to a future stream of returns that accrue to the holder for the period he holds the bond. The price of the bond is simply the present value of this future income stream, which is inversely related to the rate of interest on the bond. Let us get clarity on this concept with the help of an example. A bond promises to pay a certain stream of income in future years to the holder with the payment of principal amount at the end of the maturity period. Suppose a person borrows rupees 10,000 and issues a bond for this amount with a promise to pay rupees 1500 at the end of each year and repay the principal at the end of third year, which is the maturity period of the bond. This is an example of a 3-year bond with a coupon rate of 15%. The bond can now be sold by the holder in the secondary market for financial assets if he needs money. At what price would the holder be able to sell if the prevailing interest rate in the market is 5%? This is determined by the present value of the bond, which is simply the discounted value of the future streams of income. Present value is equal to 1500 divided by 1.05 plus 1500 divided by 1.05 to the power 2 plus 1500 divided by 1.05 to the power 3 plus 10,000 divided by 1.05 to the power 3. Present value is equal to 1428.57 plus 1360.54 plus 1295.76 plus 8638.76 is equal to 12723.25. No one would pay a price higher than the present value, and the seller would have no incentive to sell below this price. Thus, the holder should at least get the present value of the bond. If the interest rate increases to 8%, what happens to the price of bond? The present value becomes present value is equal to 1500 divided by 1.08 plus 1500 divided by 1.08 to the power 2 plus 1500 divided by 1.08 to the power 3 plus 10,000 divided by 1.08 to the power 3. Present value is equal to 1388.89 plus 1286.01 plus 1190.75 plus 7938.32 is equal to 11803.97. As interest rate increases, the present value of the bond goes down. Hence, bond prices and interest rate are inversely related. So, when interest rates fall and bond prices rise, bondholders can make a capital gain. The bond market is in equilibrium when the demand for bonds is equal to the supply of bonds. In an economy where there are simply two ways people can hold their financial wealth, either in the form of money or as bonds, equilibrium in the bond market would also mean there is equilibrium in the money market. Demand for money. Why do people hold money? This is because it is the most liquid asset available and can be readily used to settle transactions. Therefore, in Keynesian parlance, demand for money is also known as liquidity preference. Keynes provide three motives for holding money. First, transactions motive. The most important function of money is that it is a medium of exchange. Thus, individuals and firms hold money, cash in hand, or in current or savings accounts in banks against which checks can be drawn to carry on their day-to-day transactions such as purchase and sale of goods and services. The transactions demand for money is based on factors such as volume of transactions and the time lag between receipt of income and expenditure patterns. Therefore, people demand money simply for its convenience in settling transactions. This is known as the transactions demand for money, which is a function of income, a good proxy of the volume of transactions. Therefore, it is expressed as MDT is equals to function of Y. MDT is the real demand for money and it is proportional to real income Y. The transactions demand for money is essentially the demand for real balances, money demand divided by P. That is, if prices increase, then in nominal terms, demand for money increases proportionately as more money is needed to finance the higher value of transactions. Second, precautionary motive. In addition to holding money for planned expenditures, people hold money balances for sudden emergencies or contingencies related to medical expenses, accidents, mishaps, etc. The money set aside for such reasons is the demand for money for precautionary purposes. It is also a function of income. That is, MDSP is equals to function of Y. Since the motives for holding money for both transactions and speculative balances are similar and depend on income, they are generally clubbed together in the transactions demand for money. Third, speculative motive. The households hold a part of their money for speculative purposes, that is, for making financial investments and making a capital gain out of the uncertainties associated with interest rates and bond prices. We have seen that bond prices are inversely related to the rate of interest. Due to the change in rate of interest and hence change in price of bonds, the investors may wish to profit by buying and selling bonds. For instance, in period of high interest rates, bond prices are relatively low. So, People expect bond prices to rise. To take benefit from this anticipated rise in bond price, people tend to buy more bonds to sell them when price of bonds rises. Buying at a low price and selling at a higher price enables them to make capital gains. The reverse happens when the interest rates are low. In this case, bond prices are relatively high. Therefore, people expect the price of bonds would come down. In this case, to avoid capital losses, people would like to sell bonds. The speculative demand for money is thus inversely related to interest rates. As interest rates rise, people would like to buy bonds and reduce money holdings. That is, the demand for speculative balance falls when interest rates rise and vice versa. The equation for speculative demand for money can be expressed as speculative demand for money is equal to function of rate of interest. Considering all three motives of money demand discussed above, the demand for money is a function of income and rate of interest. That is, money demand is equal to function of yi, specifically expressing in linear form money demand divided by P is equal to L is equal to Ky minus Hi, where K is greater than 0, H is greater than 0. The demand for money or demand for real balances is positively related to income and negatively related to rate of interest. The sensitivity of money demand to income is measured by the coefficient K, and the sensitivity of money demand to interest rate is measured by the coefficient H. Let us turn to the supply of money to complete our understanding of money market. Supply of money and monetary equilibrium. The supply of money is assumed to be fixed by the monetary authorities. In India, Reserve Bank of India controls the supply of money through its monetary policy. Hence, the supply of money is a vertical line in the figure below, figure 1. The money demand curve is downward sloping as it is negatively related with interest rate. The equilibrium in the money market is at E, and the equilibrium rate of interest is I star. The money demand curve is downward sloping, reflecting the inverse relation between money demand and rate of interest. You should note real income is a parameter of the money demand function, so that as income level changes, the money demand curve shifts. An increase in income would shift the money demand curve to the right, reflecting the fact that the demand for money is higher at each interest rate. We will see this as we derive the LM curve below. Liquidity trap. At times, rates of interest can be driven very low, and the money demand curve becomes flat horizontal at this low rate of interest. In this case, The general belief is that interest rates are too low or that bond prices are far too high. So, practically everyone believes bond prices will fall in future. In other words, people expect capital loss associated with bonds and would not like to hold bonds and hold entire wealth in the form of money. Keynes described this situation as liquidity trap. In this situation, any increase in money supply will be held by the public without any fall in interest rates. High-powered money and money multiplier. We now look a little more closely at the concept of money supply and explain what is meant by the money multiplier. This will also help us understand the role of the banking system in the process of money creation in the economy. We know that the money is defined as a financial instrument that is generally accepted as a medium of payment. From here, we get the most narrow measure of money supply, which is currency plus demand deposits, bank accounts against which checks can be drawn. This can be expressed as follows: M is equal to C plus DD, where M is money supply, C is currency in circulation, and DD is demand deposits. We now define the concept of base money, also known as reserve money or high-powered money, H. The liabilities of the central bank are known as high-powered money. The central bank is the regulator of the entire banking system, and its liabilities consist of the currency in circulation C and the reserves held by the commercial banks R with the central bank. That is, H is equal to C plus R. You will see that high-powered money is so named because an increase in H leads to a multiple increase in money supply M through the process of money multiplier. To understand the concept of money multiplier, note that reserves of the banking system R are a fraction of the deposits D held by the commercial banks. The minimum reserves must be held in accordance with the cash reserve ratio (CRR) requirement set by the Reserve Bank of India. In fact, the CRR is an important component of monetary policy. Thus, banks are required to maintain a reserve ratio R that is a proportion of deposits of banks. Capital R is equal to small r into DD, or small r is equal to capital R divided by DD. For simplicity, we assume C is equal to 0. That is, people do not hold cash but only use checks for their transactions. In such a case, H is equal to R, M is equal to DD, capital R is equal to small r into DD. This implies M is equal to 1 upon small r into H. That is, the money supply M is a multiple of high-powered money H, and 1 divided by small r is known as the money multiplier. Clearly, the multiplier is greater than 1 since small r is less than 1. If, for example, the reserve ratio is 10%, small r is equal to 0.1, then the commercial banks would have to hold rupees 10 as reserves for each rupees 100 of their deposits. The money multiplier is 1 divided by small r is equal to 1 divided by zero point 0.1 is equal to 10. That is, an increase in high-powered money by rupee 1 will result in increase in money supply by 10 times. If central bank reduces the reserve ratio to 5%, small r is equal to 0.05, then the commercial banks are required to hold only rupees 5 as reserves and can lend rupees 95 as deposits. The money multiplier then becomes 1 divided by small r is equal to 1 divided by 0.05 is equal to 20. In this case, an increase in high-powered money by rupee 1 will result in increase in money supply by 20 times. After understanding the relation between money supply and high-powered money and learning about the money multiplier, we turn next to the derivation of LM curve, which is based on the equilibrium in money market. We will now derive the LM curve, which is based on equilibrium in the money market. Figure 2, that is, when demand for money and supply of money are equal. At the income level Y1, the money demand curve is MDY1. The rate of interest is I1. At this interest rate and income level I1 Y1, the money market is in equilibrium. This gives the first point E1 on the LM curve. Suppose there is an increase in income from Y1 to Y2. Due to the increase in income, demand for money increases. As money demand is positively related to income at each rate of interest, so the money demand curve shifts rightward to MDY2. Once the money demand curve shifts, there is money market disequilibrium at E1 as there is excess demand for money. Demand for money is higher because income is higher, but money supply is the same at MS. So interest rates rise. Remember, money demand is negatively related to interest rate. To eliminate the excess demand, and the process continues till once again money demand and money supply are equal. The interest income combinations I1 Y1 and I2 Y2 give us 2 points on the LM curve, E1 and E2. Joining all such points E1, E2 and E3, which give interest rate income combinations for which the money market is in equilibrium yields a positively sloping LM curve. The LM curve is positively sloping as an increase in income increases money demand at a given interest rate, but the money supply is fixed by monetary authorities. In such a situation, there would be excess demand for money. To equate money demand and money supply, the rate of interest would have to rise to reduce the excess demand for money. Hence, an increase in income is followed by an increase in interest rate to maintain money market equilibrium, resulting in an upward sloping LM curve. We now turn our attention to the position and shifts in LM curve as well as degree of steepness of LM curve in the next two subsections. Shifts in LM curve. The LM curve shifts when there is a change in the supply of money. Let's see the effect of increase in money supply. This is demonstrated in the figure. The money market equilibrium is initially established at the intersection of money supply curve MS1 and money demand curve MDY1. The equilibrium rate of interest is I1. The combination I1 Y1 gives one such point on LM1 curve. When there is an increase in money supply by the monetary authorities, the money supply curve shifts rightward from MS1 to MS2. As money supply increases, the new equilibrium between new money supply curve and original money demand curve is established at a lower interest rate I2. The income level has not changed but remains at Y1. The new equilibrium interest income combination I2 and Y1 is attained at a lower curve LM2. Thus, the LM curve shifts to the right as money supply increases. Exogenous shift in money demand will have opposite effects to that of change in money supply. So, an exogenous rise in money demand, for example, because people face a higher value on liquidity with money supply remaining the same, will cause LM to shift to the left. Slope of LM curve. LM curve is the locus of all combinations of interest rate and income for which the money market is in equilibrium. That is, demand for money is equal to supply of money, both measured in real terms. The demand for money is denoted by capital L and the real supply of money is denoted by capital M. Hence, on the LM curve, capital L is equal to capital M. That is, money demand divided by P is equal to capital L is equal to KY minus HI, where K is greater than 0, H is greater than 0. Money supply is equal to M bar. In equilibrium, money demand is equal to money supply. So, equating both the equations, M bar is equal to KY minus HI. HI is equal to KY minus M bar. I is equals to K divided by H into Y minus 1 divided by H into M bar. This is the equation of LM curve. Clearly, the slope of this curve di divided by dy is positive since k and h are both positive. The LM curve is steeper. Higher is the income elasticity of money demand K and lower is the interest elasticity of money demand H. Let us summarize what we learnt in this module. In this module, we learnt that Keynes provided three motives for holding money: transactions, precautionary, and speculative motives respectively. The transactions demand for money arises because money is a medium of exchange. Both transactions and precautionary demand for money are positively related to income levels. The speculative demand for money arises because people hold bonds that yield returns. Further, people can make capital gains from fluctuations in bond price. The price of bond and interest rate are inversely related. The speculative demand for money is negatively related to the interest rate. The supply of money is assumed to be fixed by the central bank of the country. The equilibrium interest rate is determined by the intersection of vertical money supply curve and downward sloping money demand curve. The liquidity trap arises when interest rates are too low. So, people do not want to make investments in bonds as it would result in capital loss and the demand for money becomes infinitely elastic. The narrow measure of money supply is currency plus demand deposits. The base money, reserve money, or high-powered money is the currency in circulation plus reserves held by the banks. The money supply is equal to money multiplier 1 by R multiplied by high-powered money H. LM curve is positively sloping as the increase in money demand due to an increase in income has to be accompanied by an increase in interest rates given money supply to maintain money market equilibrium. LM curve is steeper the higher is the income elasticity of money demand and lower is the interest elasticity of money demand. An increase in money supply will cause LM to shift to the right.